Welcome back everybody to another top vid. Today we're going to be talking all things tight turns and more specifically how to tackle them. Now tight turns, they can pop up anywhere on a track, from real steep switchbacks to absolute flat turns that you got to get on the gas round somehow. So today we're going to be looking at line choice, setup, and then which technique you might actually use on each type of turn. So without further ado, let's dive on in and hit some tight turns. First things first then, when you're approaching a switchback like this, a tight turn, this right-hander here, you've got two things to think about. You've got your setup and your line choice to sort of process really quickly in your head as you're charging towards this turn. So I think that's where we're going to start. We're about 10 or so meters out from this first right-hand turn, I said, and we've got even more distance behind me to think. So we've got plenty of time to actually go through our setup. Now, when I talk about setup, I mean looking ahead, analyzing the corner, checking out the ground and checking out lines. It's a lot to think about all in one, plus getting your body position right. So coming in, we're going to be hard on the brakes, slowing down nice and quickly but smoothly at the same time. So the setup started about 5 meters further back, but we're about 5 meters from the turn now, and this is the crucial point. So this is where you're going to be really hard on the brakes and you're already going to committed to the line choice. Those heels are going to be down, pedals flat. You're going to be looking ahead into the turn because back there is where you're already going to have decided where you want to go. This tight turn is a fairly simple, flattish turn. Even though it drops down the hill, it doesn't fade away. There aren't any big ruts on it at the moment, and it's not so tight that we're going to have to deploy the endo, which is something we'll get to later. Line choice coming in, you can see there are two distinct lines. We've got this low line here, or this tight line coming into it, or this slightly more V'd out, this rutted, wider line. They both funnel together, but the line that you're going to want to take is that wider line coming in because it's going to set you up better for into the turn. You're going to carry more speed, whereas you can see this inside, this tight line, although fairly simple on the way in, it then creates more of an S in here, which you're going to have to scrub more speed to get around the turn because you've tightened it up slightly. You're actually going to be pointing almost in the wrong position to want to point the right way, whereas here, you're opening up that turn slightly. The turn itself, as I said, fairly innocuous. It's a straightforward-ish turn. All you're going to have to watch out for is this. It is very, very loose, dusty, gravelly. That's something you'll have already analysed on your setup on the way, and you'll be looking ahead and making decisions on what the ground looked like. Obviously, knowing that it is loose like this, you're going to have to be slightly smoother on the front brake, because if you lock that front brake up, it can push on the wide ground, and you'll obviously just topple onto the inside or lock up, cross up, something that you just don't want to do. To technique used through it, you could pull a big old skid round it to try and whip that back end round, but I think you're just going to want to come out wide, smooth on the brakes, and just really follow. There's an ever such slight banked rut on the inside. Follow that through to set you up nicely for the next turn. As you come out, you'll be looking ahead out here into the next turn, a good 5 meters ahead, to then repeat the process. But I think that's enough gas in it. We should hit this turn a few times. We got us a different type of turn here then. This is a 90-degree, very loose turn. There's really only one line in here, which is this main worn line. You might come up ever so slightly higher, but there's not much choice really about this one. It's fairly straightforward. Now, there's two ways I would approach this, either the steady way, but you're gonna have to be careful because you've got this big old water rut on the inside here, which you wouldn't take because it makes the turn too tight. So I think a big old skid is what you're gonna see a lot of the time for this, especially when the racers tackle it here at EWS Crans, Montana. You're going to be coming out wide here. The front end's going to push in tighter. The back end will drift slightly wider, straight back on the gas and a straight line out of it. But we better put that into practice, I think, and see how it works. So just hit the inside line there, and it's definitely not the one. You have to slow up so much more before because the corner is so tight that you lose all your speed, and then because of that you have to get on the pedals out of it, which expends a lot of energy as well. So although it's a bit wild on the outside, the skidding sort of around it and getting that drift on is definitely the way to go. Now you might have all of a sudden started thinking, Rich, you're on a different bike, wearing different clothes, in a completely different location. Well, there is a valid reason for that. Crans didn't really have any super tight turns. So I thought, the Italians love them. So here we are at Finale Ligure on a typically Italian turn. Now this turn's about 150, 160 degrees, so it's not quite a 180, but it's got this outside line here, which is really tight to get around. There is an inside line as well, and I am on my XC bike with my seat up my butt. And I thought, this is prime endo turn territory. So how do we do an endo turn to get round a tight turn? So let's start at the beginning of the turn. Now coming into it, sort of back here, I'm spotting my line in. I said there was an inside line on this turn, and there is, but there's this overhanging tree. So actually that could be a bit in the way, especially if you're a taller rider. So I've spotted my outside line, and I've spotted just about where I'm gonna need to start braking. Now I'm gonna start braking by slowing down with both brakes to scrub the speed. And then as I get towards the pivot of the turn, sort of the midway if you like, that's when I'm gonna go heavier on that front brake to start lifting the back end and pivoting round. So middle of the turn, this is where it's happening. This is the apex of the turn if you like. This is where the magic happens. So as I said, I'm coming down, I'm hammering, and I've spotted my braking point and my turning point here. Now, it's going to be a slight stoppie, and a stoppie is when you're slightly moving on the front wheel. You can also do it when you're stationary, so you just stop, endo, turn. We're going to do a slight stoppie if you like, and that mid part here is where it's going to happen. So I'm going to get hard on the binders on the front. I'm going to shift my body weight from the back of the bike, and you'll see my arse will lift up and shift slightly forwards to unweight it, and that's going to bring the back end up as I heavily brake with the front. And I'm going to use my hips to pivot that bike round, looking at my exit. So I'm going to be up and pivoting here, but I'm going to be looking at my exit. So I'm going to be looking down here. The exit then, coming out of the turn, this is basically where I'm going to be sort of looking ahead to when I'm in that mid part. So I said my eyes are on the prize. I'm looking at between this V here. That's where I'm going to be aiming. That's my line that I want to take. So once the back end's in the air, I'll then gently let off that front brake to bring that back end down, be looking ahead, feet still clipped in, and I can get on the gas and carry on. Hopefully all in one fluid motion. This is obviously a pretty techers turn. It's rocky, it's tight, and it does drop a few meters in elevation. So if this is a skill that you're going to want to learn and practice, if you're sort of more towards the beginner end of scale, well, you can do this just with some cones set up on some grass, even on something flat outside, just coming up to the cone, on the brake, try and pivot, and off you go. Simples, but I'm going to go ride this. I'll be back.
There we have it then, some top tips for tackling those tight turns. Now, as always, I hope you've enjoyed this video. Let me know what you thought in the comments below. And you know what, why not give us a little thumbs up and a subscribe? But for now, that's it from me. Thanks for watching everyone, and I'll catch you later.